Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Hi everyone, and welcome to On the House, the Household Management Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Gabriella Joustra, coming to you from NAM, Melbourne, Australia. Let's begin. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we're going to be talking about budgeting for big life changes, and those are marriage and parenthood. And I'm talking to Dr. Pushpa Wood, who is the Director of the Financial Education and Research Centre at Massey University. Hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. So before we do get started, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. Do you mind, telling me maybe what got you into this area?
I guess since childhood, my father was a union leader, and I had seen people coming in and out, the union members, and seeking help in writing their letters or making their budgets or trying to borrow money. And from very young age, I used to work alongside with my father in all those particular areas. And it sort of got me quite curious, how come some people can manage their money and others can't? What is behind it? Is it lack of money or is it lack of management of money? And that's where, so I have been in adult literacy, numeracy, and financial capability kind of more or less all my life. Which wherever I have gone around the world or in my jobs, it has kind of in some form and shape has followed me. But for the last 12 years, I am solely focused on that.
It seems to be something that you were almost born into.
Very much so. Very much so. I had a very, very good teacher.
Your dad?
My mother. Financial management is my mother. Mm-hmm. In terms of community service, my dad. So he used to drag me into all sorts of things to help him out. But my best role model for money management skills has been my mother.
And I think we might get to that in just a minute, so I'm not going to ask you any more questions.
That's good.
So we'll move on to the next section, which is Have You Met Pushpa?, where we get to know you through some of your favorite things. So the first thing I'd like to know is, what is your favorite book?
Well, at the moment, I'm using a book called Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty, which is quite a good book in a sense, as it takes me away from the numbers and the kind of mundane money issues to a bit more deeper spiritual and getting to know myself from inside out. So it has been quite good. Alongside with that, I'm also reading second time. That is because I'd read first time a few years ago, and that is Thinking Fast and Slow. So those are the two books have been quite an interesting two from very different, one left brain, one right brain, but it keeps balance.
I think that's the way we should go. And I think it always tells you it's a good book when you've read it a second time.
That is very good. I highly recommend for those people who really want to know themselves psychologically and how their thinking pattern actually works. It's very good.
Good. I think I have it at home. It's looking at me. I'll have to pick it up soon.
You must.
Thank you. And have you enjoyed any movies recently?
I'm not a big movie person since I moved to New Zealand. So shall we say the theatre atmosphere is not the same as I'm used to back home in India. So occasionally I would look at something on Netflix, which my daughter's got me onto. But mainly I look at, short, sharp, what I would call them as a, topic-based and topic-oriented short, sharp films, which is Because I noticed over the years I've run out of patience of watching 90 minutes, even let alone 3-hour movie.
So maybe something more like a short documentary.
A short documentary, as long as it's within sort of 25, 30 minutes. After that, I start to lose because I find very difficult to stay still in one place without doing something. So I have to be doing something. So if I'm watching a long movie, I would have knitting in my hand. So my hands are doing something. As long as they're occupied, I can watch it.
I'm exactly the same. I do love watching a movie because it means I can bring my knitting. I can just sit there. I very much enjoy that.
Especially when you don't follow a pattern, you're creating your own pattern, then you're not even have to look at it, just continue. So the hands are moving and the eyes are focused.
Oh, wow. I'm not sure I'm at that stage yet. And do you listen to any podcasts?
I don't listen to many podcasts, but I do listen to quite a lot of music. So I look at quite a lot of meditational music. I listen to a lot of devotional music. I'm still very grounded in my own faith, my own belief. So that provides me, I guess the devotional music and the meditational music just centers me at the end of the day, because the job is not as easy when you're, especially when you're looking at other people's problems and issues and trying to find solutions for them. It has a tendency to take those things at home. And I try to actually keep those at distance by listening to the music.
I think that's a really great routine to have. And I think the fact that you know that you need this and that you have a routine to, I guess, get yourself, into a home mode as opposed to a work mode.
Yeah. Yes, same. So my day starts with a certain music and my day ends with a certain music.
Oh, that's a great tip to maybe use. Maybe, I don't know what kind of music everyone likes to listen to, but pick something to start your day and something to end your day.
Yeah. Great.
And we did touch on this before, but do you have a role model?
Yes, my mother has been my role model when it comes to money. I have never seen anybody managing money and running the household on a shoestring budget in my entire life. I'm yet to meet anybody better manager of money than her. So I was brought up on one very simple teaching, and I still adhere to that. My mother always said, if you only have one piece of bread on your plate, make sure you keep half for tomorrow, unless you are 120% sure that there will be one tomorrow. So I have always maintained that particular belief is that I will not go down to my last dollar or my last cent. There is always something left for tomorrow, even if it is 50 cents. So that mentality of saving something for tomorrow has been with me all my life.
I think that's a really great mentality as well, because I think particularly with some, natural events that we've had recently, we don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
And yeah, I guess having, a little bit of money in your back pocket is a really great way just to make sure that if something did happen, you're still going to be okay.
Yeah. I think the key thing for us all to remember is that our needs are minimum, but our wants are unlimited. So that's where we need to keep focusing is what can I do without? And therefore, do I have to really spend that or can I use that money for something else? And that's where the tomorrow mentality is very important.
Very good. So we have sort of diverged a little bit into our topic today, but I'm going to bring it back and start with some definitions. So the first thing I'd like to know is, how do you define household management?
I guess household management has got different layers. So you have financial management, you have a social and cultural management of the household, and then you have what I would call the day-to-day running of the household, the cooking, the cleaning, and all of that part. So it very much comes down to, in the household, whoever is included in the household, what strength area each one of that member has. So if somebody is very strong in finances, it makes sense for that person to actually manage the finances, but keeping all others involved and informed. Same thing is if somebody is better, like in our household, I manage finances. No surprises in that particular area. But I still also manage the cooking side of things whenever I have time, because that's my passion. I love cooking. I love experimenting, and I'm strict vegetarian. So I don't trust anybody else to cook for me. And my husband's cooking, being a European, his cooking is very limited for Indian taste. So it serves me to actually be that. But it very much, each household is very different. And that's where we need to play on each other's strengths rather than showing up each other's weaknesses.
Mm-hmm. Rather than saying, if you've got, 2 or 3 people in a household, why don't you do the finances? I don't want to do the finances anymore. Saying, well, I'm really good at finances, or you're really good at laundry. I'll take on this role and you take on that role.
Yeah, have a consensus. Rather than a dictatorial position, you have a round table, dinner table discussion to say, who wants to take up this particular role? Do you feel comfortable taking on this role? Right? Sometimes you might have to, as a mother, you might have to force it on your teenagers, but that's a different issue altogether.
Yes. I know as a teenager, I certainly didn't want to do anything.
Yes. I've been through that phase when my daughter was growing up. Fortunately, she's grown out of it.
And you're really just teaching them important life skills.
Exactly. I think the key thing for any parents is to give them sufficient life skills that when they actually go out on their own, whatever age that may be, right? That when they go out on their own, they are fully capable of managing.
Mm-hmm. Even if they're not the best at it, they can still do it.
They can still do it. I think that sense of independence comes with their ability to manage.
And so you've mentioned some important life skills. And I think this is an important life skill. So we're talking about budgeting. So first of all, what is budgeting? It might seem like a simple question, but let's make sure everyone knows what we're talking about today.
See, different people, shall we say, define budgeting in different ways. Some sort of are so pedantic about the spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, or an app on the phone or whatever. For me, the key thing in budgeting is having a jolly good idea of what your income level is from all sources. So if it is a household income we're talking about, then everybody in the household, what is their income? And then you need to have a very good handle on what your outgoings are, right? And third thing you need to be looking at is what is left over, right? So in any budget, your target needs to be having some leftover. There are only 3 ways you can go when you're making a budget, right? Either you end up with surplus, or you will end up with zero, no money come in, money goes out. Or you can end up with deficit. Now, that's the third situation, is the one you definitely have to avoid, right? So you need to be looking at, if you end up with the zero, break even, then you need to target towards some saving. Right? So what budget actually does, it gives you an idea of income and expenditure, and then it gives you the ability to where you can actually adjust your spending. Or if you cannot adjust your spending, you're really right at the bottom, whatever you need to, you cut down everything that you could. Then your second option is, can I increase my income? Right? As a household, how can we increase our income? Because if you can't, there are only 2 things you can do. If you have money, either you cut down your spending or you increase your income. There is no third way, right? Unless you decide to go into debt and then stay rest of your life in debt.
And that's not a great long-term solution, because you won't have much.
It's not. There is not all debts are equal either, right? And that's the other thing to always remember, is there are what I define as productive debt, and then there is a destructive debt, right? There's a debt that actually adds value to you. And there's a debt that actually continually wearing you down.
So my guess is that a productive debt would be maybe like an educational debt.
It could be educational debt, it could be mortgage, it could be reskilling yourself. If one skill area has dried up for job, it could be that you are in a business and you need to expand. It could be that you're in a business, you need to diversify. But I always say if you are borrowing, regardless of the amount and regardless of the purpose, you must have a plan to pay it off.
Mm-hmm.
So before you actually borrow, you must have a plan. How am I going to pay it off? What is my time frame? Is it going to put pressure on the existing budget?
Mm. And so what was the term? And
productive and destructive.
Destructive debt. I'm guessing destructive debt is debt that you get into that you don't have any way to pay off.
That, and also a lot of in my observation, majority of the, shall I say, destructive debt is to meet your wants rather than meeting your needs. All right? And in my experience, sometimes I find young people are very, very skilled in justifying their wants into their needs. For example, I have to have an iPhone 11. My question is, do you need to have a phone that does all the things that you want to do, or do you necessarily need to have iPhone? Right? Same thing is, I need to have Nike shoes, right? Top model. Do you really need a Nike shoes if you can't afford it, or do you need shoes that does the job that you're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the issue comes in.
Yeah, so obviously they're still related to needs, but they're sort of going, I guess, for the higher end of things that they don't really need. It's just a want.
It's the label.
Mm-hmm.
It's the label. It's I need to be like next door. And it's not only young people. It's adults are just as guilty for that. Or borrowing something when you know before even borrowing, you have no means to pay for it. Right? So you need to, and I teach that to even 5-year-old, that if you borrow, it has a cost. So I was talking to somebody, a 5-year-old, who said, what is the cost? I said, if you borrow something from your friend, then that means you're giving your friend a license to borrow something from you. And they might want to borrow something that you don't want to give it to them. But you lose that bargaining chip because you have already established that.
Okay. And you're starting from as young as 5. Wow.
I start even younger than that. I think to me, if you're teaching your children, then you need to teach them, forget about money, you need to teach them delayed gratification. If you can teach them delayed gratification at as young age as you can, you're setting them on a good path. The problem is the instant gratification that we are actually bringing our children in. The child puts their finger on something in the supermarket or in the shopping mall, and the parent opens the wallet. Without even having conversation. Why do you need it? What are you going to do about it? Or no, we can't really have it this time, but we will work on a budget.
Yes, I think that's very much a problem that, I think when parents go to the supermarket with the kids, they can make a lot of fuss and it can just be easier to buy things for them, but, you have to teach them the skills for the long term.
Yeah, and the conversation needs to happen not in the supermarket. It needs to happen before you leave for that. Again, I've written quite a lot of tips about it, that how to actually teach children 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, what to teach them about money and how to teach them. There are a lot of handy tips. It's not a rocket science. It's a common sense and a willingness to have conversations with your child.
Great, thank you. And are those on a website, those tips?
Some of them are, but if people want to know, they can easily email me and I can always share that. They've been published by different magazines and that, but I keep copy of them.
Great, thank you. We'll make sure that your email address is put into the show notes. So if people do want to find out this information, they can contact you.
Thank you.
So we're talking today about not just budgeting, but also budgeting for big life changes. So how does something like a big life change impact our finances and our budgets?
They have a considerable impact. So if we take, say, marriage, in marriage, you will end up having most probably nowadays increase in income because there will be two incomes coming in rather than one. But there will be slight increase in your expenses as well because now there are two people who are there. So you need to be looking at expenses for the marriage itself, the marriage ceremony itself, but then looking at how are you going to manage your finances and what proportion of your joint income or individual income, depending on how you want to manage your finances after marriage, what proportion of that is going towards meeting some of your big goals. So whether your big goal is buying your own home, whether your big goal is going on a big overseas trip or whatever that may be. So you need to have that conversation to say, these are some of the goals. This is our next 5 years plan. And this is what we want to put aside. This is what we want to save. Right? But at the same time, you need to keep in mind that whatever you're planning based on two incomes. What happens if, God forbid, one income stops? What is your contingency plan? Right? And one income can stop either job loss or the second big event, a childbirth. Right? And that could be another thing you need to plan. The difference between marriage and childbirth or parenthood is that there the income level reduces, expense level goes up. Right? That's automatic because you will not be able to, it may reduce temporarily during the maternity period, or it may reduce for next 5 years, depending on how you want to plan that. So again, if you're not accidentally fallen pregnant or have gone into that parenthood role, it pays to plan beforehand the expenses you are likely to incur, the expenses, immediate expenses, short-term expenses, long-term expenses. The second challenge with parenthood, it is not a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year commitment. It is a long-term commitment. And believe me, even when they're 30, they still come back, right? So when they have their own family, they can still come back, right? So it is a lifelong commitment. Parenthood is not a temporary job. It's a full-time, lifelong job. So you need to be really looking at what are your expenses going to be before the childbirth, because you're now gathering all the things for a child. Then what are your expenses going to be 0 to 1, then 1 to 5, and then once they start to go to school, what are your expenses? And the expenses are going to increase. Their needs are going to increase, expenses are going to increase. So what plans are you putting in place to meet those needs, right? And that's why we noticed here in New Zealand, there's a lot of parents are delaying having children because they feel they haven't accumulated sufficient funds to meet those immediate needs. Mm-hmm. So it's important to think the expenses that are going to happen at different stages of that child.
Okay. And is there most kids go through roughly the same things. Is there a way that we can know all of the expenses that we might, or the common expenses that children might need?
Yes, there are some guides that we have prepared. There is actually a group that I work with. Is I think they're called. What are they called? I can put a list out, but there are 2-3 parenting group which actually have put out a list of things that you need to. Years ago, I prepared one for one of our banks and for our Plunkett nurses to say, okay, before childbirth, after childbirth, until they're 1, until they're 5. So there are things that you need to be, there are standard needs for a child. Question you need to ask is, do you need to buy, for example, do you need to buy a new pram, or do you think you can have a hand-me-down? Do you think you need to buy this new, or can you? So there are some things you can share, and that's where I think the family structure changes have actually impacted quite a lot on new young generation, because in my time, as the cousins handovers would come through, right? So I was the oldest one, so my younger sister never got to buy kind of new clothes till she was teenager, because mine were going to her. So it's that kind of joint family structure plus the circle that you have. It is very, very important to look at what support network you already are connected to, or you might need to connect to. Right? Mm-hmm. So there are those needs. But then at school time, there's a usual, apart from their food and that, their usual school books, their school uniform, their school shoes, all of those kind of things. So each stage of their life, the needs are expanding. Right? Mm-hmm. Question is, do you buy labeled, big label things, or do you buy things that are good quality but not necessarily big label? So they meet the need of the child. So, and in other words, for hockey shoes, for example, if your child is playing hockey, do they need to have Nike hockey shoes, or do they need to have a good quality hockey shoes that might be $30 or $40 difference?
Okay, so figuring out what your budget is, and then also what the expenses are going to be, and where you can make compromises and where you can't make compromises.
Exactly.
Okay.
And talk it through. You talk it through your partner. When your child is old enough to understand, involve them in that conversation to say, this is how we're going to work through. So this month, we do not have sufficient money left after paying everything else we need to live on. We will budget for it for next month. I mean, the best definition of need and want I was ever given was by a 7-year-old in one of the sessions I was running, who said in a typical, 7-year-old style, so Mrs. Wood, anything that I cannot live without is a need, and I can go to mom and dad for that. Everything else is a want, and I'll have to work for it and save up for it.
Wise words from a 7-year-old.
If only adults can learn that, life will be a lot easier.
Okay, so it sounds like the first few steps when preparing for marriage and for parenthood is to, find out what the expenses are going to be, find out what your income's going to be, and also just discuss with whoever is involved in the marriage and in the parenthood about what the goals are. So what happens if you find that there is a discrepancy? You've mentioned before that, if you can't cut, then you need to increase your income level. But I feel like it's not just as easy as saying, oh, I want some more money. How do you go about increasing your, increasing that?
I guess there are different ways. So say as a mother, if you are stuck in the house for say 2 years, you've decided that you want to give your child the best possible start. The first 1,000 days, you want to stay home and be a full-time mother or a full-time father. Then you need to look at, okay, so what is the drop in the income? What are the consequences of that? Because maternity leave is not for 1,000 days, right? So therefore, what we need to be looking at to say, can I do something from home? So I can't do full-time, but can I negotiate with my employer to actually do part-time and work from home? Can I work with my husband or my wife's role in their employment where when they are working, I'm looking after the child. When I'm working, they're looking after the child. So can that be adjusted? Are there anything else skill set that you can utilize? Can you do teaching? Can you do some cooking from home? What are some of the skills that you can, I mean, nowadays with social media, there are so many avenues where you can actually share your skills and generate income that way. Then in my time when I had my daughter, none of that was available. I hadn't heard of Facebook at that time. Now there are so many groups, support groups are there where you actually discuss with the like-minded people to say, how did you go about it? And how did you go about it? One classic example I heard a few years ago was the two neighbors talking to each other, and they both had big backyards. One of them actually had the big trees, so was going to get them cut. This is in South Island. So they talked to each other and they said, look, I need some firewood. Can I have some of, when you cut them, can I have some of that firewood? Fantastic. In exchange for that, I grow potatoes and onions. I'm quite happy to share that with you, right? If you don't want the money. So sometimes money doesn't have to exchange hands. Even just talking to your neighbors, I talk to my neighbor to say, this year I'm going to put this in my veggie garden. What are you putting in your veggie garden? Because there are only two of you and there are only two of us. So there's only so much we can consume. So we will share it. And that's what we do. Over the fence, we talk to each other. Okay, so what needs sharing? There are ways of not necessarily increasing income, but then cutting it down. Right? So you're not buying vegetables from outside, you're growing inside.
I love the idea of, learning more about your neighbors and being able to share that. And also, making sure that you're not both growing tomatoes, you don't both end up with lots of tomatoes.
Exactly. There are a number, I love making pickles and chutneys. So I put out a call to my neighborly group every year in the lemon season to say, right, guys, I'm in hunt for lemons and limes. In exchange, I'll give you a jar of my pickles. So each year, somebody comes up with the bags and say, okay, when can I come and collect my pickle jar? So there are ways, the more you know your neighbors, the more you can find number of ways to help each other out. We're all in it together. We've been through it, or we are going to go through it, or we are going through it.
I love that.
Well,
so, we've discussed a little bit about, how to come up with a budget, how to discuss finances. Actually, we haven't discussed how to discuss finances with your partner, say, because I imagine that's a difficult conversation to have, particularly if one is maybe reluctant.
It can be quite difficult. It can be sometimes, fortunately or unfortunately, males who have difficulty in discussing finances than the females, right? So it could be that if you involve them in budget to say, right, now the family circumstances have changed, so we need to manage the budget. What role would you like to play in that? Would you like to work with me in setting the budget and then managing to make sure that we stay within the budget? Or would you like me to manage the budget? And if I am going to manage the budget, do I have a free hand to tell you when you are going over budget without you taking an offense, right? That's what I would call the mutual consent way, right? Mm-hmm. There's also dictatorial way as well, that in a marriage, there are sometimes one partner who's just, the money runs through their hands regardless, right? No matter how much you try, it doesn't work. And then you need to come to agreement to say, okay, we have limited money. We're going to look at, you have certain amount as pocket money, I have certain amount as pocket money, and that's about it till next payday. So you cannot really dip into, and I'm going to manage the household budget, right? Mm-hmm. So you manage your pocket money, leave the rest for me, and I will manage it for that, right? The third strategy, which I have used again, because I work with all sorts of different families and couples. One strategy I've used is where I've said, okay, let's agree on what is going to be our grocery bill, right? What is going to be our grocery budget? We open a separate bank account and the grocery amount goes into that. So we agreed 150, that will go each week in that account. And that's about all. And that is only going to be managed by debit card, no credit card allowed for that account. So if you run out, you run out, right? You have to wait till next week, right? So you're putting those kind of strategies in place that gently controls persons overspending if necessary. It's absolutely interesting and amazing how quickly they learn about cheaper things. I've tried same with the children. Give the responsibility list and the money, the amount to a child to say, okay, you're going to manage it. Incentive for you is that if you manage to get everything that is on the list within the amount allocated, anything that is left over, you get to make a decision how we spend that money. No? And you will be amazed how quickly they don't want what is baked beans. They're happy with the home brand because they can see the saving there.
So yeah, involving everyone, if possible, involving everyone in the budgeting and finances so that they have some say, and also so they can understand, where they can skimp a little bit so that they can have what they want.
Yeah, because as parents, we kind of have this notion of let's hide everything from children. Or we have a notion, oh no, they won't understand. We underestimate children's intelligence all the time, right? Children are, from the day they're born, they start observing our behavior, right? They are taking in a lot more than what we actually think. And so therefore, to underestimate the intelligence, I would involve a child to say, guys, we have a slight issue here. We are $50 short this time. I need everybody's help to come up with ideas how we can manage that. You will be surprised how they can come up with some of the, So let's involve them in that. And let's hear their ideas.
Yeah, I think when I was a kid, my parents, used to give us a budget for our clothing. And then, obviously we would manage it ourselves. And, if I didn't have enough money for shoes, that's my fault because I bought too much of other things.
Exactly. And I think we need to start giving that responsibility with guidance, right? But the problem I am observing is parents simply either do not have time or do not make time or do not invest time in having that conversation with their children. So it's easier to open the wallet, hand over the card and go and swipe it, right? Rather than having conversation, why do you need it? And can you wait till next week? Or can we wait till next month? Can you help me to save up that much? Let's have a look collectively to see how we can save up that much. So if you want to buy earlier, you'll need to help me to save it up.
And what about things like chores? Do you recommend that with kids?
I've had numerous discussions and different people have got different parents have different set of beliefs. I usually say the pocket money has been biggest point of discussion normally. So I usually say to people, children are part of the family. They're part of the income side. They're part of the expense side, right? Therefore, you cannot leave them out of managing a household. So if they can manage according to their age, according to their ability, they should be contributing into the house. I don't believe in paying my child to keep their room tidy or to do the dishes or to bring the washing in from outside. They're living there in the house. I'm paying for their food. I'm paying for their clothing. I'm paying for their schooling. I'm paying for everything for them at the moment. And I'm working full time, right? So what work are they doing for their keep? And that's where we teach them the value of work and the value of money.
Thank you, because that's a contentious topic I have with multiple people. It's more just a interesting conversation, I think.
A lot of parents find it very difficult. They said, "Oh no, but I give my child a pocket money." I said, "I'm not against pocket money, but when you give your child pocket money, do you invest 10 minutes with your child to say what are you going to do with it? Mm-hmm. What do you plan to do with that this week?" Right? So usually I say, teach them, divide it in 3, right? One portion for spending, one portion for saving, one portion for giving. And we are social animals. If we cannot take care of our own society by giving, whether it's giving to church, whether it's giving to a cause, whether it's giving to a charity, whatever, but they need to learn that they need to contribute to the rest of the world. They're not only for themselves. And that's very, very important. So if we can't teach them that value of money, if we can't invest 10 minutes each time when we hand them the money to say, where are you going to spend it? How are you going to spend it? And what are you saving for? Right? What is your goal?
And what if they say, what if they specify a goal that you know is important to them, but you don't think is important?
I think that's something you need to have conversation with them to say, okay, that's good. That's very interesting. Why do you think? Mm-hmm. Right? Get them to explain why. And you will find 9 out of 10 times while they're explaining to you and while you're asking them constructive exploratory questions, they themselves will realize. Right? I give you a classic example of years ago. That was before I was even full-time working in financial education. I had this young man who said, "Oh, Pushpa, I'm really very upset with my parents." I said, "Why? Why are you upset?" "Because they're not giving me money to go and buy the phone. I want to buy the new phone." I said, "Do you have a phone?" Right? And yes, I do. "Does it do everything?" "Yes." "But why do you need a new phone?" "Because everybody else has got it." I said, "Okay." So the quick exercise I got him to do is I said, take an A4 paper, fold it twice, then on left you write down for me everything that your current phone can do, every function that it can do. On right hand side, write down for me what the new phone and only the new phone can do, right? The functions only. We ended up only about 5 of them. Right? Because majority of the things. I said, so you're telling me you're quite prepared to pay $600 extra for these 5 functions? Because that's all you're getting apart from. So it's just making them realize without saying. So I believe in not saying to the child, say, no, you can't have it. I get them to explain why you want this. What is it going to happen? And what will happen if you don't? Again, investing time.
Yes, I think that's the thing that people often underestimate is how much time we need to invest with our kids explaining these things.
Exactly. I mean, they are our responsibility. We brought them in this world. They didn't come all by themselves, right? So if we didn't prepare ourselves to be ready for them, then it's our fault, not theirs.
So we've talked a lot about, how to teach kids about how to budget and also, some of the things that we have to plan for when we're looking at big life changes. But how can we build some financial resilience, as we're planning on going into these big life changes like marriage and parenthood?
I think building the resilience is 2-3 things you need to do. A, you need to be fully aware of how money works. All right? You need to be fully aware of what is available and the risks of borrowing. Right? You need to be fully aware of saving plan. You need to have a saving plan and start saving, even if it is a small. So kind of having a mindset that I'm not going to spend my last dollar. Right? So work out a budget when you're thinking of getting married and start looking at what will happen before, during, and after the marriage. What are some of the expenses going to happen? Are you going to borrow for that? Or are your parents going to help? Or are you going to save up for that? Or is it going to be all of the above? All right. So you need to be sort of start thinking that. And I always say to people, regardless of what your income level is, try and instill a habit in yourself and in your children is saving something for your rainy day. That's the most important part, is that start saving something for your rainy day. Even if you look at your lifestyle and say, okay, I'm going to go every Friday without coffee. And that coffee money is going to go in my savings, right? Or I am going to go, instead of going every week out for dinner, we are only going to go twice a month. So 2 meals are going to go into the deposit. Because remember, after marriage, there are 2 meals that you will be paying for, not one. Although you have 2 incomes, but you also have 2 expenses as well. So you need to start looking at those, where can you make adjustments before even the hard times hit you. Because if you start adjusting yourself from the very beginning, then it doesn't hit you that far.
Yeah, I love how you're saying, instead of cutting out all coffees or all takeouts, it's like, can I reduce by 1 or 2 what I'm already doing? So you still have those enjoyments in life.
Exactly.
But you're still saving more than you did before.
Exactly. And I think that's the way to look at it. I mean, I always say money is there to be spent, all right? Provided it's your own money, all right? You haven't borrowed it, right? I mean, I maintain my spending diary. I still have a spending diary, which is a, B5 notebook, right? That's one very, very practical, hands-on tool. I have tested it out on literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to change their spending habits, right? So you have a spending diary, you write down a date on the top. At the end of the day, write down everything that you have spent on that day, whether it was on your card or whether it was cash, whatever. Each day you write it down. Invest 5 minutes in writing it down. And then at the end of the week, you sit down with a pink highlighter and a green highlighter, right? And start highlighting day by day everything that you must have to spend the money on, right? That's your need side. That's your green highlighter. And the rest is your pink highlighter. And the third thing you do is then you add up all of your pink. Don't worry about the greens, all of your pink amount that you have spent during that week. And then ask yourself a question, what else could I have done with this money had I not spent on that? Right? And it's kind of showing you mirror, and you'll find within 4 weeks, 5 weeks of managing that diary, you will start to look at slight change, gradual changes in your own spending habits.
Okay, so in some ways, ignorance is the way that we...
defense. It's the best defense for going into debt.
And yeah, it's a very easy way to, I guess, to start fixing your financial problems if you just start looking at it, because then you can start seeing the patterns rather than saying, I don't know why I don't have any money.
Yeah, because you don't know where it is gone. Right? And that's the biggest challenge we're facing, is that money has become more and more invisible. All I know is a plastic card. I just swipe it. Whereas if I have cash in my hand, once it's gone, there's nothing to use, right? So I always suggest to people I call 2 types of people. There's one who are internally disciplined when it comes to money, that no matter what temptations are, how good the sale is, they will not open their wallet, right? They're internally disciplined. If you are not one of those and you need external discipline, that's where you need to put some stops along the way, right? And that's where some of these tricks and tips are very, very helpful to see actually where is my money going. Or a lot of people in our profession refer to is what are my financial leaks? Where is the money leaking, right? And the best strategy I say to people who have no idea is for 6 weeks, give me 6 weeks and manage your funds only and only in cash, right? Apart from, your rent is going out, but you're spending money, only manage in cash. Put your card away in a freezer for 6 weeks. And it will be interesting to see how that habit changes. Because once it's gone, there's no way you can find it. Whereas plastic is very good. Or third strategy is you use debit account rather than credit account. Don't use credit card because they're the biggest killer on your pocket.
So now I'm going to pick your brain with some practices that you do to manage your own household budget.
Okay. In our household, for the last 4 or 5 years, we changed the pattern a bit, slightly. And so majority of the regular expenses, that's the power, the internet, all of those kind of things, they are all on automatic payment. So it automatically goes out. Then we look at in terms of groceries. And there's a set budget for groceries. That's my husband's department for the last 3 or 4 years. He never used to do that. We always used to go together, and it's part of necessity. I don't have time when he's free. He doesn't have time when I'm free, kind of thing. So he has the responsibility of that, and he has a budget that he manages on that. And then we have a automatic saving. So like I have personally, and I don't mind sharing it, I don't have all my account in one bank. So I have my holiday account with a different bank, which is a regular amount. My pay comes in, and that amount goes into the supposedly my holiday account, which has been accumulating. My second account is what I call my slush money. And that is that again, a set amount goes every payday in that, right? So the holiday account is if I want to go a big holiday, there is a money sitting there. It doesn't come out of my regular budget, right? So airfare, all of that comes out of that. My slush money is if I feel like going out or whatever I want to do, that money comes out. Or when I go overseas, that's my spending money for overseas, right? So that's how I particularly sort of look at. The other thing I usually do, which has served me very well over the years, is that every Monday morning I give myself pocket money, right? Set amount, pocket money, cash, right? That goes in my wallet. And if I want to buy a coffee or want to feel like having lunch or feel like going out with somebody, that's what that money is for, right? Following Monday, I tip my wallet out on the dining table. Whatever is left from the previous week goes into my savings jar, and I put the same amount again in my wallet. The idea is my brain is trained that this is the set amount I have for that week, regardless of how much saving I've done, right? And that's what is my unaccounted for, unexplainable money. I don't have to explain to anyone. I don't have to think about spending it. I just do whatever I feel like doing with that money. Interesting thing I've noticed, the beginning of the year, first 4 or 5 weeks, very small amount left in there because spending. And then as the saving jar increases, my spending decreases. Because now I want to see that increase, my saving increasing, right? So then I try and sort of say, okay, why do I have to buy it when I can actually, in the grocery bill, there's already enough stuff at home that I can actually bring home. So I don't make any bones about bringing my lunch from home. To me, it's not a shame. It is my strategy to save. Instead of giving somebody else $15 to make something for me, which I may or may not like, I bring what I feel like, right? And what I want to. Again, you need to invest some time, make your lunch or make it night before or whatever. So those are some of the sort of simple, very workable strategies that I use. I also have what we call the emergency fund or rainy day fund. That is, if your washing machine breaks down or anything, that money is there. I don't have to borrow. That money is for that particular purpose.
Yes, very important to have
Separate.
a bit set aside for that.
Yeah, it's very important. It doesn't matter how small, but you'll be surprised how it accumulates.
So we're going to do the questions from the audience now. And now for our listeners, if you are interested in contributing to our questions, just check our Instagram page early in the week, Monday and Tuesday, depending on where in the world you are. And it should be on our stories. So just keep an eye on that and it'll let you know who we're talking to and what we're going to be talking about. And today we've got one question. So it is, are there specific financial tools or apps that can assist couples in managing their finances together? And how can these tools be tailored to the unique challenges of marriage and parenthood?
I think the key thing to remember is that whoever is your bank, whoever you're banking with, and to best of my knowledge, almost all banks have tools. Some have more than others. And it is a matter of you exploring what your unique challenges are. Because before you even look for apps, you need to have a discussion at home first between the two of you to see what financial habits you already bring into the marriage with you. What are you actually already bringing in? And do those habits actually need refining before you start to look for? And then you need to look at, do you want to save jointly or do you want to save separately? Right? Because that's what will determine what type of tools you can actually use. Because some partners are very happy separately saving and contributing. I know a lot of couples where each one manages their own diary and their own income level, but they also have a joint account where all the household expenses are going. Right? Mm-hmm. So it depends what your personal preference and your circumstances are. And that's where you then start to look for. And I usually say, ask Auntie Google, she will give you a whole lot of different options to look for. There are a number of apps for spending. You can keep your spending record through those apps. I use one for my tax purpose, for example, which is just running every time I collect a receipt, I just take a photo and record it. So if you want to really be that pedantic, you record that way. Or you can look at your bank statements each month. Whatever you do, you need to be engaged with your finances. All right? You need to be actively involved with managing your finances. You can't just simply say, right, I've set it up, $50 a week is going into that account, and you have no idea how much has it been, whether you're going backwards or forwards, all right, depending on the interest rates. You also need to, once you've got sufficient amount, start to think about how can I make it grow? Do I have an investment mentality or not? If I don't, do I talk to somebody who can give me some advice that how can I make my money grow? Saving is one thing, investing is another thing. So you need to get into the saving habit and then start getting into the growing habit of you. Younger you are, the more you can afford to take risk, right? So when it comes to investing, I usually say to people, ask yourself one question. The higher the benefits any investment plan is stating, always remember there will be higher risk, right? So you need to ask yourself question, can I afford to invest in this high risk investment plan? And what happens, can I survive? If I lose that money, can I lose it without having a heart attack, right? And if the answer is no, I can't, then you really need to do some homework before you invest in that. Because if you are that risk averse, you need to be looking at it. Because every investment has a risk.
As I don't really like watching TV shows where they invest money because it always scares me.
Yeah, I am very. I'm pleased to hear from you. I'm excellent in saving, right? I can challenge anybody to do slightly better than me from that point of view. I'm hopeless in investing, right? The reason I'm hopeless is I don't like taking risks. I have worked very, very hard for my money, and I don't want to lose it. Not at this stage of my life. I was slightly more reckless when I was young because I knew I had lifetime ahead of me to recoup that. Whereas, so when people on our KiwiSaver here, I usually suggest to young ones when they're just going into KiwiSaver, you can afford to leave it for 20 years. Make it grow as much as possible. Put it on a high growth fund rather than a conservative fund. At my age, it has to be the minimum risk that needs to be. So each age group also, your age also plays an important role. Your family circumstances play an important role. Who else are you responsible for? So depending on your cultural background, apart from you and your husband, you also are supporting your siblings, or you might be supporting your extended family.
And I'm guessing that the more you have to risk, family members, the lower risk you want to go with investments.
Exactly. The more responsibility you have, the more careful you are.
Reminds me of a saying. So thank you so much for talking with me today. If our listeners want to find out more about you, where can they go?
Well, they can go to Massey University's website. You can go to your page, and that's where all my details will be there. And if you forget everything, just ask Auntie Google with my name. She has my whole life history, and she will tell you how to contact me. But with my name, you can find me on LinkedIn with my name. You can also find me with my name on Facebook. So I not overactively, but actively, I do contribute to both of those sites with issues that I'm facing at the moment. For example, I'm talking about, have we actually complicated money too much? That people are scared of managing their own money and they're going to somebody else to seek advice. Can we simplify it? So it's that kind of, so if any of your listeners want to take part in that discussion, you're more than welcome to join me on LinkedIn and do contribute to the discussion.
Great. Thank you so much. And we'll put all of those links, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the university in our show notes. So if you don't want to ask Google, you can take a look in the show notes.
Show notes. Exactly.
Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, a pleasure. You've been listening to On the House, produced by the Household Management Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes like this from across 10 life management perspectives can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smart devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at hm.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Gabriella Joustra. Thanks for tuning in.